In the Ozark Mountains of 1859, there were three sisters that the townsfolk refused to speak of. Their names were whispered only when the firelight flickered low, voices barely audible. Some claimed the shadow of their home could chill the very air, that even the trees seemed to recoil from their presence. I discovered fragments of their story, hidden letters, ruined diaries, the remnants of rumors preserved in hushed voices. What could three women have done, so extraordinary in their cruelty, that time itself seemed to bend, eager to forget them? Tonight, I take you into the heart of the valley, into the forests and forgotten clearings where their story began, and into the events history refused to record. The Ozarks in 1859 were different than the maps suggest. The forests stretched endlessly, with gnarled trees crowding over narrow valleys, and the air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves. Fog clung to the lowlands like a living thing, and every sound carried further than it should. A snapping twig, the rustle of a fox, the low moan of a creek winding its way through the darkness. The Triplets' home lay at the edge of one of these valleys, a small cabin partially hidden by overgrown hedges and wild vines. Even from a distance, something about the place felt wrong, like the forest itself whispered warnings. Villagers avoided the path at night. Dogs would growl without cause, and livestock sometimes disappeared, never to be seen again. Travelers who ventured too close spoke of fleeting shadows just beyond sight, shapes that seemed human, yet moved with unnatural silence. I've walked those same paths, tracing their steps. The forest swallows every sound, yet when the wind shifts, I can still feel the weight of something observing. The first accounts of the Triplets' cruelty came from neighbors living closest to the valley. Children went missing for hours, only to return terrified, unable to speak of what they saw. Animals vanished without trace. One farmer claimed that on a quiet night, he saw three figures standing silently by the edge of his cornfield, staring at him without blinking. There was no movement, no sound, yet he swore he felt their attention pressing into him, as though the world itself had grown narrower around their gaze. I visited the valley at twilight, following the old wagon trails. Every step seemed heavier than the last. The leaves whispered underfoot, though no wind blew, and branches reached out like skeletal fingers. Sometimes, I thought I glimpsed a figure just at the corner of my vision, a woman, or perhaps three, but when I turned, there was nothing but fog and shadow. The valley seemed to fold around me, as if it remembered them, as if the forest itself still awaited their return. Records from the county archives tell little of the Triplets, but the fragments speak volumes. They were born to a secluded farming family, daughters of the valley, and from an early age, neighbors remarked on their unusual demeanor. Some claimed they moved in unison, others that their laughter could unsettle even the most composed villager. Stories of their cruelty began as pranks, but escalated with time. Animals found dead under impossible circumstances, strange fires igniting in abandoned barns, villagers reporting whispers in the night. No official records survive detailing their actions directly. Letters burned, journals lost, and yet fragments remain. A note scrawled in trembling handwriting describing their eyes, like the forest itself had turned against me, or a ledger detailing livestock, stolen and slaughtered in ways the local constable refused to record. They became a story no historian dared write, a chapter deliberately erased from memory. Locals whispered of the nights the Triplets appeared beyond their property, sometimes across fields, sometimes by the creek. One farmer swore he watched them move silently through the fog, bending branches and leaves as though they were weightless. He said that when he blinked, they vanished, but the mud remained pressed into shapes of tiny, unexplainable footprints, leading nowhere. Dogs would howl until dawn, and horses refused to enter the valley. Nothing like this had been recorded before, nothing so deliberate in its quiet menace. I followed the same creek, stepping carefully along the moss-covered stones. The air was colder here, damp against my skin. A sudden gust sent leaves skittering across the path, and I thought I saw 3 shapes again. No, just branches, yet my chest tightened. The valley seemed alive, responsive, and I began to understand the stories. That fear lingered here long after their presence had ended. By the time the triplets reached adulthood, their acts had grown bolder. Villagers reported seeing them near cabins at odd hours, watching silently. Fires were set in fields, livestock slaughtered, and yet no one could confront them directly. The most vivid accounts speak of a winter night when 3 travelers went missing, leaving only footprints leading into the woods, never to return. When villagers investigated, the snow was untouched, except for the initial tracks. Then nothing. Not a sound, not a trail. Only the void of the valley stretching out before them. I walked the same valley during a late winter evening, snow crunching beneath my boots. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. I could see my breath, hanging in the air, and I felt eyes on me. 3 shapes, taller than shadows, moved in perfect silence just beyond the tree line. I stopped, heart pounding, but when I tried to focus, they were gone, leaving only the oppressive stillness of the forest. The acts of the triplets were never documented in court, yet fragments tell the story. Livestock killed, supplies destroyed, and the occasional disappearance of a neighbor who never returned. One surviving diary entry, smudged and nearly illegible, reads, "They came to the window. I saw nothing but eyes. I cannot write more." The valley remembers them. The mountains remember. And in the fog, one can almost hear the echo of their laughter, carried over decades, unanswered and unresolved. I retraced the paths of missing villagers, imagined the terror that must have gripped them, and realized how impossible it was to escape these sisters once their attention fell upon you. Fear was not just emotion here. It was a force, tangible and suffocating, shaped by 3 presences the valley itself seemed to recognize and respond to. Even decades later, the story of the triplets lingers in the valley. Descendants of the original settlers avoid the paths, unwilling to speak aloud. Local children dare each other to approach the abandoned cabin, yet few ever step inside. I left the valley, but on quiet nights, when the wind carries just right, I can still feel their gaze. And I remember the weight of eyes that watched me, 3 figures long gone, yet impossible to forget. History may have erased the details of their cruelty, but the forest remembers, and if you listen closely, it may tell you its secrets too. Would you dare to step into the valley where they once walked? Could you survive a night where their eyes might still follow you through the mist? History may have forgotten the triplets, but the valley did not, and neither should you. If you've made it this far, you're braver than most. Subscribe to Dark Room of Whispers for more stories of the forgotten, the hidden, and the impossible to forget.